right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the two people that watch my videos, usually just like my mom and dad. Anyways, yeah, this is a video that I thought I would never have to make, but here we are. So I guess I'll just kind of explain what happened. So back on July 6th, I believe, I ended up getting the engine controller kit for this car, which had the wiring harness, the computer, everything. That was pretty much the last piece that we were waiting on to fire this car up. So I basically spent about a day and a half, day and night, just getting this car ready, the harness all plugged in, making sure everything was good. So at that point, it's time to fire the car up. So before I fired the car up, we primed the motor, as it says in the manual for this LT4 motor. It says you have to prime the motor to make sure it has good oil pressure. So I just unplugged the fuel pump, cranked the motor over, and it built oil pressure almost immediately. So I just kind of kept cranking it over for a little bit, probably around a minute, just off and on, just making sure everything was good. So, comes time to fire it up, plug in the fuel pump, crank it over a little bit, fires right up. The only issue we had was the aeromotive fuel filter that I put in this car. I think from the factory it was just loose and I didn't check it. So basically we're pouring fuel out the back here, so shut the car off. Basically just took a wrench, tightened up the filter, good to go. Fired the car back up, no issues whatsoever. It was running great. So basically I kind of finished everything up. We let the car run in the garage here. We bled the coolant system basically as best we could, as well as the coolant system for the supercharger. We just kind of let it run for a little bit. Everything was good, no leaks. Like I said, had good oil pressure, water temp was good, nothing out of the ordinary. So at that point, me and my brother decided it was time for the first test drive. Just kind of took it around the block out here, just made sure the brakes were still working after the car's been sitting. It was shifting through all the gears, clutch was working fine, there was no weird vibrations with the drive shaft or anything, and everything was good. So we bring the car back to the garage here, pop the hood, just check everything over again, make sure there's no leaks. My brother had a temp gun with him. He pointed it at the radiator hoses and the radiator and the motor, just to make sure we weren't overheating and the water temp gauge wasn't wrong. So we go, all right, let's go to a gas station and put some gas in the car. So take the car to the gas station, it's running great. Fuel it up, and then we probably get, I'd say, 3 or 4 miles out. And I get the car into 4th gear, just kind of taking it easy, braking the car in. Basically, I was in 4th gear, and then we were approaching a 4-way stop, so I just popped the car into neutral, coasted up to the 4-way stop. And as we got probably 20 feet away, the car just shuts itself off. No warning, no noises, nothing. So go to crank the car over. The starter sounds like it's under load. It just kind of sounded off. And so we basically just call my stepdad to bring my brother's truck out, and we just flat towed the car back to the garage here. We get the car back in the garage, and I was like, man, maybe it's a wiring issue since I just got done wiring this car. Maybe it's a bad ground. So I decided to run another ground wire, and then we actually found the positive battery cable terminal. The bolt that goes into the battery was stripped out, so got that taken care of. Go to start the car again. Car fires up for probably half a second, and it makes a screeching noise, and then it just shuts itself off. So man, at that point, I'm just freaking out. So me and my brother get to work right away. So first thing we do is we pull all the plugs out. Wanted to make sure all the plugs look good. All the plugs looked fine. Nothing looked out of the ordinary. There wasn't any excess fuel or anything. So that looked good. End up dropping the starter. We thought maybe the starter locked up or it got stuck or something. The starter was completely fine. And then I went to the front of the motor. We pulled all the belts off. I spun all the pulleys. Just wanted to make sure all the pulleys were spinning freely, and they were. Supercharger's good, you know, water pump, all the other little pulleys, fine, nothing wrong there. So we drop the oil, we drain the oil, take the filter apart, and there's nothing out of the ordinary. There's a few little particles, you know, but I mean, it's a brand new motor. There's gonna be some particles, but everything looked okay there. So at that point, I'm trying to brainstorm and think of anything else that could be wrong. And I got to thinking, I was like, well, maybe a bolt backed out on the flywheel or a bolt on the clutch, and a bolt got loose and maybe it's coming into contact with the flywheel in the back of the block and it's not allowing it to turn, or that bolt's making contact with the belt housing and the flywheel. So I spend the following day, the whole day, dropping the transmission out of this car. Go to basically turn the motor over at the crank bolt, you know, with the plugs out and the belts off and everything, the starter removed, transmission removed. Go to turn it over with a socket and a wrench, and it's just locked up. There's no movement in it whatsoever. So at that point, I kind of had a mental breakdown, man. It hurt. I basically just had that gut feeling like there's internal damage to this brand new crate motor. And you know, I just kind of lost it there for a little bit. As you can see, I shaved my head. But man, there's a lot of emotions tied up in this car. This was my grandfather's car, you know, obviously before he passed away. This was his dream setup, to have an LT4 with a Tremec T56. This is exactly what he wanted. So I just kind of picked up his dream. And I'm not a rich guy, you know. I put everything I had in this car, every paycheck, all my savings. I actually had 3 motorcycles before I started building this car, and I sold all of them to fund building this. So I was all in, you know, not to mention the 5 months of just coming over here at least 4 days a week to work on this car, you know, researching it basically 24/7, what parts fit, what parts don't, what do I need. There was just a lot of time, money, and emotion tied up in this car. And so, yeah, it hurt a lot. But basically, after that, I, you know, kind of had my moment and called Summit, and they basically told me, hey, we don't handle the warranty side of these crate motors. You're going to have to reach out to GM. So they give me a number to call. I call the number, and I don't want to say they weren't helpful, but it was not an easy process. Basically, they told me, hey, you need to take the motor to the dealership that you bought it from to have it diagnosed. And I said, I bought it online at Summit. How am I supposed to take it to Summit? So they say, well, you need to call a local Chevrolet dealership in your area. So get off the phone with him, and then I contact a local Chevrolet dealership, and basically I tell him the whole story, and the service manager goes, well, since you purchased this motor third party, it wasn't purchased from us, we don't necessarily want to take on this work because we're concerned that if we do the work, you're going to be liable for the cost of it. So they had never dealt with a situation like that before. Understandable. So I reached back out to Summit. I'm like, hey, this isn't working. Can you guys do anything for me? And they go, well, you know, our vendor, the one that we buy the motors from, we'll reach out to him, but he's on vacation. So I end up having to wait like a week and a half for this guy to get back from vacation. Not his fault. So he was a little bit more helpful. And basically he reached back out to the same guy I talked to originally, and they contacted another Chevrolet dealership in my area across town, and basically I end up going into that dealership, talking to the service manager there, and he goes, well, can you bring the car in? And I was like, well, I already pulled the motor, because at this time it was already like, you know, week, 2 weeks have gone by. I was like, the motor's got to come out anyways. And the guy's, oh, that's not good, you shouldn't have pulled that motor. I was like, well, I'm the one that put it in, like I haven't opened up the motor. And so after a little bit of back and forth, they were kind of hesitant to take it on. So a few days go by, service manager calls me and says, hey, we don't really have anybody with the capability to take your motor apart here. We're going to outsource it to another shop down the road. So after a bunch of back and forth with GM, the GM dealership, and now this third-party shop. They finally get the authorization to take apart the motor and diagnose it, take pictures, see what's wrong with it. So take the motor in, drop it off. About a week and a half goes by until they're finally able to just take the oil pan off of it and look at it. Basically, once they got the oil pan pulled off, you could kind of see immediately that one of the rod caps was discolored. It was like a blue purplish color just from it building heat. So they popped that cap off, and sure enough, it spun a bearing on one of the rods. So I'm not sure what I could have done to prevent that. But anyways, they pop it off, and you know, the shop lets me know, and they say, yeah, you can come look at it if you want. So I drive down there, and I talked to a few of the guys at the shop, and they said they think it was a clearance issue from when it was assembled at GM. They said they didn't think that it lost oil pressure because everything else looked great. It was just that one rod cap or that one rod bearing that spun. So they think it was just a clearance issue from when it was assembled or what have you. But that was kind of a relief, honestly, to find out that's what it was. Because I mean, this whole past month, you know, I've just been tearing myself apart, being super hard on myself, thinking like, man, what could I have done wrong to have caused this? Was there anything I did when I was putting this motor in, or the transmission, or anything that could have caused this that would make it a fault basically on my end? And so yeah, I mean, it still sucks that this happened, but it's just been a giant relief to know that it wasn't my fault or my brother's fault when we were assembling this car. So yeah, basically where I stand right now, there's another guy at GM. It's one of their engineers. He's the one that kind of processes these claims, but he's out of the office and on vacation until next week. So I got a few more days to wait, and then when he gets back, hopefully I'll have an answer if the motor's going to be warranted or not. To me, it's kind of plain as day. Like I said, I don't know what I could have done differently to prevent that. There's really nothing. I would have done everything the same. Everybody I've talked to, all the mechanics I've talked to, all my friends, not once was anybody questioning anything that I did after I explained the whole story. And they all basically told me, hey, I would have done it the exact same way that you did. And there was no signs pointing to that happening. Like I said, the oil pressure was good. The car didn't overheat. There was no strange noises other than when we went to go fire the car back up and it made the screech noise. And then that's when we knew something was catastrophically wrong, basically. So yeah, hopefully they warranty the motor. I don't see why they wouldn't. Like I said, it's kind of plain as day to me, but I guess we'll find out what they end up doing. But just thought I'd give an update on what's going on with the car. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next one.